Hi everybody, welcome this evening. I'd like to thank you for joining us. I will be introducing folks this evening. I'll be introducing our guests and reading the land acknowledgement. I'm Maureen Warren, Curator of European and American Art here at CAM, and I am the curator of the exhibition Fake News and Lying Pictures, Political Prints in the Dutch Republic.
Can we give that
That exhibition may sound like something related to things really far off and obscure, but in actuality, it's about artists responding in real time to a very divided capitalist society with a two-party political system who never had anything nice to say about one another, and were fighting to whitewash historical events and lay claim to history in their own fashion, so nothing we can relate to. But when I was working on this, when people would ask me, even when I was doing my dissertation research, what do you study? I would say, I essentially study political cartoons 400 years ago, the kind of things we see in newspapers. And so when I was organizing programming, it was a real delight to kind of have my dream team of participating artists all say yes. And this is something that, as a political junkie and fan of the art world, has always interested me, how artists respond in a short time frame, taking some of the most horrifying and upsetting events in our life and turning them into something funny or satirical or cutting, to make us have new insights about those events. So I'm really grateful to the artists for coming and to Stacey Robinson for moderating this evening's conversation. I'd like to begin by reading the land grant acknowledgement. The University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has a responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which it exists. We are currently on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Muskogee, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. It is necessary for us to acknowledge these Native nations and for us to work with them as we move forward as an institution with Native peoples at the core of our efforts. I'd also like to take this moment to thank the co-sponsors that have made this event possible: the School of Art and Design Visitors Committee, the Samuel H. Kress Foundation, and Krannert Art Museum. I'd also like to take a moment to say, as you are increasingly overwhelmed with the splendor of this artwork, you should bear in mind that you will have the opportunity to purchase some of it afterwards, so keep those checkbooks handy. The first guest I would like to present, Eric J. Garcia. Eric J. Garcia creates murals, mixed media installations, hand-printed posters, and political cartoons. He received his BFA with a minor in Chicano Studies from the University of New Mexico and earned his MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Garcia is a teaching artist, a core member of the printmaking collective Instituto Gráfico de Chicago, and one of the newest members of the Justseeds Cooperative. Garcia has exhibited nationally and can be found in the collections of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, National Hispanic Cultural Center, Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Library of Congress. Keith Knight. Keith Knight is a prolific cartoonist whose life inspired the live-action series Woke, currently streaming in its second season on Hulu. His work has appeared in Mad, The Washington Post, The New Yorker, and dozens of other publications. Among Keith's many awards are the Glyph Award, the Harvey Kurtzman Award for Best Syndicated Comic Strip, the Inkpot Award from San Diego Comic-Con, along with receiving an NAACP History Maker Award. He is the current Rubin Award nominee for Artist of the Year and recently received an honorary doctorate from his alma mater, Salem State University. Ann Telnaes. Ann Telnaes creates editorial cartoons in various mediums: animation, visual essays, live sketches, and traditional print for the Washington Post. She won the Pulitzer Prize in 2001 for her print cartoons, only the second woman to win that, and the National Cartoonist Society Reuben for Outstanding Cartoonist in the year of 2017. In 2021, she was awarded the International EWK Award, named after legendary Swedish cartoonist Ewert Karlsson. Oops, too soon. In 2022, she was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for her illustrated reporting and cartooning. And last but not least, our moderator, Stacey Robinson, Associate Professor of Graphic Design, and whose work you should not miss upstairs in the Black on Black on Black exhibition. Thank you.
All right. Oh, yeah, let's do that.
All right, testing. Can you all hear me? All right, awesome. So, yes. Oh yeah, can we get some light up here? With the lights out, all you're gonna see is teeth. This is like. So the format for tonight is we have until about 6:30. We're gonna converse for about half of that time. Then we're gonna open it up to Q&A, and you're gonna have the other half of the time. Want to give you as much time as possible with our visitors. Is that all right with y'all? Yeah. All right, awesome. I'm just super excited because Keith and Eric. I'm hanging out with my homies. You know what I mean? So this is going to be a really relaxed, fun, kind of open conversation. We're going to talk about some things and be all over the place. Ann, can you hear us? Hi, Ann.
Hi there. Nice to see you guys.
All right, awesome. Ann, I have not met you, so it's wonderful to see your work, and we're all going to get to know each other right here, right now. So feel free to jump in, and if there are any difficulties, just let us know in the chat. All right? Yeah. All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so earlier at lunch today, there were some interesting things that came up, and before I get into some of those things about thinking about like how do we balance the responsibilities between our personal calling and making art and taking care of the needs of our families, right? We were having some interesting dialogue around, I'm going to jump into the oddest question. I'm not even going to save this to the end. If you were not making this really politically charged art, what on earth would you be doing?
I want to hear from Ann. What would you be doing, Ann?
Ann, can you hear us? The question.
I can. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
awesome.
I was going for my unmute button and I was having problems. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a vet. But I really was horrible at science, so I couldn't become a vet. You know what? I've always drawn. I can't imagine not drawing. I mean, can you guys? Haven't you always drawn your entire life?
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about that earlier. I think everybody draws when they're young, but then a teacher will hold up, someone's like Eric's and say, "Look at Eric's, everybody! Look how great Eric's is!" And then everyone else feels bad and stops drawing. So, but yeah, we just happen to be the lucky ones who got our, teacher holding up our drawings. But I will say this: I would be a food critic, and I wouldn't even say a critic, but a food writer. Like I love to eat, and you saw me at lunch today.
I was waiting for this answer. I was so waiting all night for this answer.
We went to the Broadway
Food Hall.
Yeah, and we never made it by the first booth, but like I I have very strong opinions about food, and so that's what I would be. I believe that Anthony Bourdain had the greatest job in the world, which is go around, travel to different countries, and hang out with cool people and eat. That's the dream. That is the dream.
I think I agree with Ann. I've always been drawing, so I've always been doing art. So it's hard for me to think of what else I would be doing. I did have a crazy fantasy when I was younger. I was a big James Bond fan when I was super small. I remember growing up watching all of his movies on the regular TV. So half of it was edited by commercials and stuff, so I didn't really get the full effect. But I always thought traveling and whining and dining with fancy women, I always dreamed like that was the ultimate goal in life. But drawing, I can't think of anything other realistic occupation that I would want.
Like we would all have an Aston Martin, right? This is interesting. So, and the reason why I wanted to lead with that question is kind of goes into a logical question of thinking about why this particular medium, like why drawing, why not photography, right? And I like to think about that when I'm talking to my students, like to get them to thinking about what is the medium that is best to reach your audience, right? So, and this is open to use. Well, I want to make sure you get this question. Why this particular medium? Why is it cartooning? Why is it not photography? Why is it not something else? Why is it not DJing? What is it about this particular medium that is the best to reach your audience?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, from a personal point of view, that's what I do the best is I draw. But I think from an impact point of view, cartoons are, first of all, they're universal. I mean, it doesn't really matter what country you're in, you know, if you can speak the same language. And I think even more powerfully, class, because anyone can appreciate a cartoon, whether you're young, old, rich, or poor. And it's very, very powerful in that regard. So I think even though photography is powerful, I think cartooning kind of disarms people because, you know, everybody is kind of, they love to look at them. But an editorial cartoon can have a very powerful message. It can be an uncomfortable message, but it's in the form of a cartoon. So I think that's why it's such a universal, strong medium.
I think for me, I think accessibility is a huge part of it. I think it's super simple if all you have is a pencil. Like you can draw everywhere on anything. I think it was very easy for me to not have like expensive equipment or technology or fancy cameras. You know, it could be super expensive, but the plain number 2 pencil is like the ultimate weapon for me and the easiest weapon for me. And then what I create, these cartoons, these humorous drawings, they're just, you know, if we break them down, they're just funny little, they're funny drawings, right? But these funny drawings have a lot of meaning behind them. So they're almost like a Trojan horse because you think you're looking at something very funny and humorous, but then you start thinking and pondering these deeper ideas of what they truly are talking about, and they're really not that funny. So I think their accessibility allows it to be a medium that reaches a lot of people, either through publications and mass produced in the newspapers, or even more accessible through social media. So I think accessibility is a key component to them.
I think you should hold that right in the middle, and then we just pass it right back.
That's a great idea.
There you go. Problem solving. Yeah. No, cartooning is art for the masses. What I love about cartoonists is we are the modern day court jesters. So we speak truth to power with something that looks like childish or maybe simple and humorous. But like you said, we take complex issues and we make them palatable and hopefully simplify them and put them in a way using metaphor and text and illustration so people who may not be able to read can still be able to get a cartoon. And that's what I love about it. And it is like, I think you said it, like, you take everything away from us, like, if you take everything away, all you need is a pencil and a piece of paper, $1.50, and you could still create. And that's what I love about it. It is like the most accessible medium, and people automatically buy into it. That's another thing, which is Jurassic Park or Jurassic World wouldn't work if the special effects weren't great, like the dinosaurs weren't so cool, right? But with a cartoon, like, no one questions whether Garfield, like, cats don't eat pizza or lasagna, right? Like, but people just automatically buy into cartooning. No one questions it. It's just like, oh yeah, these animals talk to people and all this stuff. That's what you automatically buy into it. And cartoons have been around since hieroglyphics, cave paintings. It's been around forever. So that's what I love about the medium.
Wow, this is powerful. So I don't know if Patrick may have mentioned this, but we're in the very beginnings of building an illustration concentration. It's a very, very exciting time. And I think we have a rare opportunity to really get some awesome advice about what we should be thinking about as we're building this program, and maybe thinking speculatively around the next 5 years. What should we be imagining and building right now and thinking about in preparation for the next 5, maybe 10, or even 15 years? And of course, we're going to start with you. If you need a moment to think about that, that would be awesome. But if you're ready for an answer.
Oh, ask me the question again.
Okay, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So we're in the process here at U of I, in the School of Art and Design, of in the very early stages of building out an illustration concentration. It's a very exciting time for us. And thinking about maybe the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, what we would want that illustration concentration to be. What should we be thinking about right now in preparation for that?
Okay. So I actually do teach a class up at Cal Arts. I'm in California right now. And the one thing that I think is really important is to teach fundamentals. I mean, I think that we have so many wonderful tools, with the computer and everything. But if I was going to tell people how to really learn illustration, I would say just learn how to draw first, and then you can go on and use all the tools that are available to you. That's just my biggest notice about that in my class, because they're very talented, they're very involved, they're very aware of the issues and what they want to say. But I think until you're very comfortable, like what Eric was saying, is you're just comfortable with this pencil, you can do pretty much anything. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I think I am.
I would recommend that your students not become political cartoonists. I would tell them that there's plenty other industries that would help you survive in the capitalist system that we live in.
And speaking of capitalism, I would say that just the art school as a whole have a financial literacy class for artists, and to give them the tools to build a career, because I think a lot of artists don't know and or feel like they're destined to be destitute or broke. And I think the more you know about the opportunities you have as an artist, it's not just, you have to do this or do, like, there's so many different ways, and we talked about it. There are grants out there, like state grants, city grants, federal grants, like all types of grants. There are opportunities for illustrators from not just magazine illustration or online illustration and stuff, but like you see art everywhere, and murals, and just so many different opportunities. So I do an online class too, where I exclusively talk about that. That's all I do, is talk about how to make a living at this, because you scramble and you learn it on you learn by looking at people succeeding, and you try to emulate what they're doing. But like I hope to just be able to just speak about the mistakes that I've made, and then the successes I've made. I think that's a super important thing that I think people need to be taught.
And learn to adapt too, learn to pivot really fast. I think Keith is a really good example of that. I mean, he does all kinds of stuff. He's always hustling. He's always trying to get his creative ideas into different forms. And that's what you have to do nowadays. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, I mean, if we're just going to talk about editorial cartoonists, everybody got on a newspaper and that was their job. That's not the way it is anymore. I mean, you really have to learn how to adapt. And, and Keith is right. You have to learn to be your own best advocate, for, making a living. And, I have to say my students, I think, are better adapted at that, because they've got their stuff on Instagram. They're going out there and showing, they're doing their own little comic books. They're going to, to Comic-Cons and selling themselves. I think they're just, they just assume they have to do that. So I just think that's just something to keep pushing them on.
All right, awesome. Thank you, all three of you, for those really awesome answers. We're at the top of the hour, and I want to take a moment to open this up to Q&A, and then if we have some time, I can definitely go back to some questions. I want to give you as much time as possible with our guests. Any questions so far? If not, I definitely got some other ones. All right.
Ann, what is the artwork beside your head?
Sure. And do you see the image that is next to you?
I don't see anything.
Oh, in your background, I guess. In the background? Yeah, what is that image behind you on the wall?
That?
Yes.
I didn't do that. It's actually a friend who's a painter did that. It's called Salt Boat. Yeah, it's beautiful. I couldn't do that.
Awesome. And Maureen has a question.
What is the cartoon you're most proud of thus far?
What is for everyone or for Ann? Okay, so we'll start with you. The question is, what is the cartoon that you are the most proud of? And Ann, we'll start with you.
Are you kidding me? I'm supposed to remember after all these years? You know what? I think, as other editorial cartoons, you're just forging ahead really fast. And I'm, as soon as that thing is out there printed or posted or whatever, I'm on to the next one. You feel good about if something, gets a lot of comments and people are talking about the issue, but you got to move on because it's your next cartoon that's important.
Wow. That's really interesting because as artists, we tend to have these emotional connections with our work. I know, like I do, right? Have these emotional connections.
You cannot do that. I was in animation, and the first thing they taught you was don't fall in love with your drawing because it's not about a drawing, it's about the movement. You should be able to throw away, for every drawing that you keep, you got to throw away 5. So do not fall in love with your artwork.
Ooh, we'll pass the mic on that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think I agree with that. I don't think I have a favorite. There's so much to talk about. I'm constantly looking towards the next issue, the next cartoon, and in general, I'm not always satisfied with my old work. I think that's kind of what pushes me to make more work because I want to make something new or something better. I think one of the best compliments that I get, one of the compliments that really has an impact on me is when someone says, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know about that issue or that piece of history. It wasn't told to me. Those are the comments that I love because that means that I'm really making some kind of small impact with my work. That I'm it's not for sure a piece of art for art's sake. It's a tool for education, for people to be aware of things that there was either whitewashed over or blatantly erased, forgotten. So that's what's important.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most unique things about being a cartoonist, especially someone who has a deadline, is you can't spend a lot of time going, oh, I can fix this. You just got to get it out. And I had, when I was doing my daily, I had 9 deadlines a week for 11 years straight, and it's just like, you can't spend too much time on it because you just got to get it out. You got to get it out. And so, yeah, it's always, it's like you said, when someone comes up and says, they'll talk about a strip I did 20 years ago, and it's just kind of wild. But it's one of those things where if you ever, I don't advise anybody to do a daily strip ever in the history. Don't ever do it. But the advice I got when I was about to do it was great advice was from Andy Singer. He does independent cartoons, and he just said, listen, he compared it to baseball. Hall of Fame hitters only get a hit once every 3 times at bat. And that hit can be a single, it can be a double, very rarely a triple, and every once in a while a home run. He says you got to look at cartooning like that. Not all of them are going to be home runs. And, not all of them, you don't need to swing for the fences all the time. And I thought that philosophy was amazing. And he said, listen, and when you do hit that 1 or 2 grand slams, people will always remember you for it. And they will follow you forever. It's such a great analogy, because people do like go, oh, I remember the strip that you did and 25 years ago, and they still follow me because of it. And, I could be a hack now, but they'll always remember that grand slam. So it's a great analogy. And also, who was the Chicago comedian who had a TV show? He's passed now, but he was great. Bernie Mac. He had the other philosophy, which is this advice was for comedians. He says, you don't have to be funny all the time. You just got to be interesting. And I thought that's a great philosophy too. So those are 2 philosophies I carry as a cartoonist.
Wow, I'm blown away by those answers, because I'm like, aren't we chasing that home run? Isn't that what we're always chasing, right, as artists? And I'm like, maybe it's just me, but I'm always like chasing that particular thing. I'm not thinking about, making this thing and getting it out. I think I'm always like trying to wow, like that for that.
But life happens. So life happens, and especially if you have kids, and they're screaming and running around, or you're sick. Like, I remember when the closest family member, my great uncle, who was inspired me as an artist, died. I still had to get my deadlines in. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be happy now. I'm going through this terrible time, and that's when you just have to get it out. And that type of stuff is going to happen, and life happens. So
would you say it's better to make something that's not at the best quality, but at least get it out there, versus take a pause and wait for a better time to do it?
Oh, you have deadlines that you have to hit. So there is no you can't. Pause. Yeah, there is no pause. So that's the problem. And when I was doing a daily, I think you get 2 weeks of you could run reruns for 2 weeks, and I'm sure I had used that up by then, and it was late in the year, and sometimes you just don't have it, and there are certain things that you fall back on. I mean, the great thing about doing a daily cartoon is there's tropes. Charles Schultz had the Lucy holding the football, or certain things that always would happen you can return to, and that's how I got through a lot of those things, which is you come up with tropes that you can return to. And now I can't even tell when that period was. And it's just, when you look at the bulk of work over those 11 years, I thought there were times where I was like, this is all terrible, but now I look at collections and I'm like, oh, this ain't bad. Yeah, this is pretty good. So it's really interesting what we even think of what is good and what's not, because I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I love this strip that you did, and I was like, oh my god, like that's one where I was like,
Not that one.
yeah.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing.
Sure, and I want to give you an opportunity. You want to follow up with anything?
Well, I was just going to talk about, with kind of what Keith was talking about, deadlines. I mean, that's the thing about editorial cartooning is it's not something you can work on for, months, and then, like you said, have your absolute best piece. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I have done an editorial cartoon that I just hated the drawing. I mean, it was painful to look at it afterwards. And then that's the one that everyone is talking about because of the idea, so, and then the other way around, I do this beautiful drawing. I'm like, oh, everybody's going to love this. And nobody even notices it because it's just not hitting them, in terms of the topic or what I'm saying. So I think that's kind of what Keith and I are kind of talking about, is you just have to move on when you're doing editorial cartooning, because you're commenting, either every day or several times a week. I do pieces that take longer. It's funny, I've found now, since I've been working like this for so long, I love coming up with ideas. I get terribly impatient when I have to actually finish it. I kind of want to go on to the next idea because I got another idea. So I love to draw, but I just, once I figured it out on my head, I want to go on and come up with something else.
I definitely understand. I see some heads nodding in the room. Absolutely right. That's a thing. I just had that conversation a moment ago with some people upstairs giving a tour, and they asked a question about me using my own reference photos because I collage. And I was like, if I took the photo, it would be done. So it's not really interesting to me. But when I see something else, I see another story in it. Very interesting. We talk about that. That was poignant. All right, awesome. I see a hand in the back. Latrell, how's it going?
Oh, good. I'm curious about this conversation about time and deadlines and getting it done. And I wonder, what is your process when you're not doing something for a deadline? Do you have times when you're just drawing to draw, and it's not for a thing? And what is that?
All right, so I'm going to repeat this to the best of my ability. All right, outside of deadlines, do you take the time, or do you have the time to draw just to draw? Did I get that right? Yeah. All right, awesome. Ann, you want to start?
I mean, I do other projects, like my own personal stuff, but to just draw, I don't at the moment have the time. I do look forward to that day where I just can kind of sit down and do that. But right now, my schedule is so packed that I just don't sit down and draw for pleasure. That's terrible, isn't it?
I'm the same way. I'm like super busy. I have a 2-year-old at home right now, and he's cut my work time in half. So I'm scrambling to keep up with my political cartooning. And when I'm not doing political cartooning, which I consider my short-term projects, I'm doing installations and sculptures and murals and stuff. So those are like bigger, long-term projects. So I'm constantly working, and when I say that, I also want you to know that I'm having fun. I'm doing my passion. I'm it's not like I separate my studio work from my fun work. Like, this is my passion. I'm living basically my dream right now, because I'm working, I'm making a living, and I'm doing my work, and I'm also creating, and I'm doing what I love. So Do I have any time where I'm just drawing just for fun, not for an exhibit or for a deadline or for a for a commission or something? Now with my 2-year-old, we draw with crayons, and we play with paints and stuff. And I guess that would be the time where I'm really unpressured to make something spontaneous. So I guess in that way, yes. But I love my work, and it's hard for me to separate my passion from work, or my love, my fun time from work.
Yeah, the last time I drew for just pure nothing was March 13th, 1992. And I was stoned in a bar in San Francisco, and I thought I was drawing the greatest thing in the world. And when I sobered up, it looked terrible. So, but similarly, the only time where I draw for like just nothing is I do that game where I'll scribble something, and then my son will create something from that scribble, and then he'll scribble for me, and then I'll draw something. So that's the game that we play. I do it with both my 9-year-old and 14-year-old. But yeah, it is, to me, it is a wonderful thing to be drawing and knowing that everything I draw I'm getting paid for. You know, it is really a wonderful thing. Like it's I mean, sadly, this is capitalism, I guess, but my joy is when I sell a few things on my website, I get a check in the mail for the show, and then someone inquires about licensing my comic for like a poster or something. 3 things, 3 different sources of that. Because here's what you do as a cartoonist. You're giving birth to, like, in it's a crass way, you're giving birth to this piece of art, and they're immediately working. You're making them work. So go out there and make me some money. So I do the strip. It runs on websites and newspapers and stuff. And then I'll put it in a book collection. Then hopefully it'll get licensed to be in a textbook. And then I'll maybe it becomes a print, like the prints back there. Like I love that you can use it to do all these different things. And so that's the time. I think the artwork, I said this, 15% is doing art. 85% is marketing and doing the business aspect of it. If you want to make it a career, you don't have to make it a career, but like that's the ugly reality. You know, it's a tough. And if people are prepared to if you know that going in, then it makes it easier, I think.
I just wanted to say something about what Eric was talking about. You know, that's really true what he's saying. You know, yes, it's our job, but you really have to love this to want to get up every day and do this. I mean, I am just as excited that as I was, 30 years ago almost? Yeah, 30 years ago, that I would get up in the morning and I'm excited and I want to do it. I'm not dragging myself to do this. I mean, there are days that I don't come up with ideas, which are frustrating. But I always tell my students, you know, if you want to go into something like editorial cartooning, social commentary on a regular basis, you have to really love it, because you're going to need that to do it every day. So to just draw what we're drawing is our pleasure, as Eric was saying.
I love that. I see some more hands in the room. Gwen, yeah.
Yeah, I was interested in, when you think about, so some of the work, I was listening to an NPR interview recently with Maria Ressa, who is the 2021 Nobel Prize winner for journalism, and pushing back against Duarte and just totalitarianism, dictatorships in general, and talking about how much courage that took for her to be that. And I wonder about courage and bravery in what you're doing, because it is a controversial, or there can be controversial topics, and you are pushing back against power in a really deliberate way. Does it ever make you nervous? I mean, supposedly we still have a democracy, and it seems like we do, and things are good, and we're grateful for that, but knowing about people in other places that maybe are less secure in that way, knowing about how things have changed politically in our country, just do you think consciously about, I'm doing something that's controversial and I need to draw on some kind of courage, or I need to be brave, or are you just naturally sort of gadflies? Do you just naturally have that impulse to push back?
All right, I'm gonna repeat that to the best of my ability.
Sorry,
No, it's great.
I should have found my way there.
No, this is perfect because I knew it was going to go here, right? So, all right, Ann, the question is about bravery and knowing, are you making those choices to be a brave political cartoonist, an editorial cartoonist, knowing that you are pushing back against power and those things? Am I getting that right? Yeah, awesome.
Well, first of all, I think all editorial cartoonists do have a thick skin. I mean, you sort of have to because of the reaction you get. I mean, you really cannot take it personally at all when people are telling you how stupid you are and that you don't know anything. And we get a lot of that. I'm not really, there's been instances where I've been a little bit, walking out of my front door, but nothing compared to what my colleagues have to deal with overseas. I mean, we have colleagues that I'm involved with Cartoonist Rights International, and we help cartoonists around the world, either get out of their country or help them with money to get out of their country or get them out of jail. And they don't have the First Amendment like we do. I mean, we do still have that, thankfully. They are imprisoned. They are threatened. They're beaten up. There was a cartoonist in Syria several years ago that had both his hands broken because of what he was drawing. And they're killed, as you all know, with the Charlie Hebdo in 2015, the Charlie Hebdo killings, the satirical magazine in France. So, I feel like as Americans, we shouldn't feel like we're particularly brave, because we're allowed to do that. But some of my colleagues overseas are pretty damn brave. Yeah.
I never think about bravery when I'm creating such imagery. I think it's something I've always done. It's something that I was raised to do in my philosophy of being active in our society. All the mass shootings do make me wonder. All the mass amounts of high automatic weapons in our country just scares me in general. And now that I'm a family, I do think harder and maybe have second thoughts on doing things. But I think that's more about a societal thing. It's more about a societal issue in general of what's happening in our nation. But I don't really consider what I do bravery. It's more of a something that I need and I have to do with my art.
Yeah, and just to go back to what Ann and I were at a convention in Columbus last month, or 2 months ago, and there was a Jordanian artist that was there who had to leave his country, and he would get arrested when he put out different images and stuff, and so he took his family and got out. And it's so crazy that he wound up in Columbus, of all places, where there's an American editorial cartoon. Like, he just, I don't know how he found out about it, but did he contact you, reach out to you?
No, I was walking around the conference and he came up to me and we started talking, and that's how that started.
Yeah, he just happened to move his family to Columbus, and there's like every major editorial cartoonist in the country is there, and he said all his heroes are here, and he just showed up, and I spent like an hour talking to him about just like,
Which he was so excited about, Keith. That was so nice of you to
yeah,
do.
he just wrote to me actually last week because he has listened to some of the stuff that he actually took my class, and now he's about to take the next step. So I'm helping him write his press release because he is a great example of where America could go if you allow all these people to ban books and not teach the real history of this country. And it's just like him saying like, I came to this country because you guys have these rights and you have people who want to take them away. I'm a cautionary tale. Like, don't do that. I came to this country. Don't turn it into my country. So it's pretty amazing, and it's true. Like, we have it easy here compared to a lot of cartoonists around the world.
Thank you so much for this amazing panel. I'm just learning so much and just dazzled by your work. This is kind of similar to Gwen's question. You're all amazing draftspeople and creative, and I'm just wondering, was there a moment in your careers, in your lives, maybe when you were quite young, when you realized that you were going to sort of turn your talent towards political drawing, towards criticism, towards commentary? Was there a particular event? Was there a point in your life? How did that sort of gravitas that you wanted to bring through humor, as you beautifully described earlier, why humor? Was there some moment where you realized you need to be you want to direct it towards social commentary, towards a certain sort of critical voice? I have another question too, but let's go with that, just since it's piggybacking on the earlier.
All right, and if I get this wrong, let me know. All right. All right, so the question is, what was the moment, when was the moment you realized that your work would become political or needed to be political? Did I get that right? Or a political commentary or a criticism? Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to start?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I actually came to it quite late. I studied character animation. I was going to become a character animator. I wasn't political. I was a very bad young woman, and I didn't read newspapers in my 20s. I had no interest in anything. So late one night I was working. I know, it's crazy. I'm embarrassed when I tell people this. So late one night I was working on a freelance project, and I had my television on, and the Tiananmen Square massacre happened right in front of my eyes, which is kind of interesting since all this stuff is going on right now in China. And I was so affected by that. I think because the students were close to my age, and to watch a government mow down their young people right in front of me just had such an effect. So, I did a cartoon that night just for myself. And I think that kind of awakened something in me. I started reading the newspaper. I started watching C-SPAN a lot. I just became more interested. I was still working at Disney at the time. I wasn't trying to sell any editorial cartoons. But when I finally decided to send my work to newspapers was when I watched the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas hearings. And I was a young woman who had experienced sexual discrimination at work. And I was frankly appalled at both the Republicans and the Democrats on that Senate panel who didn't believe her. And I was so motivated that I put together my own portfolio, not knowing what the hell I was doing and not realizing there were no women in editorial cartooning practically. And I just sent them out. And that's how I started.
For me, when I was a teenager, I had always been drawing, again, like I had said, but when I was a teenager, I got a job with a youth arts organization that gave teens art jobs for the summer, and one of the art jobs that I became involved in was murals. So I apprenticed under a muralist for all my teens. But it wasn't until my older brother, took me down to Mexico City for the first time, and I saw the great murals of Los Tres Grandes, of Diego Rivera, Jose Clemente Orozco, Siqueiros, and I saw public art that wasn't art for art's sake. Like, these murals were heavy, and they were talking about everything. They were talking about history, politics, culture, revolution. They were public art forms. They were made to be out in the open space for people to impact them and to teach them, to be a tool for learning. And that had a huge impact on my art. I said, I want to make art like that. I want to make art that has impact. Now, I didn't go into political cartooning until I went to the military. I did my 4-year stint, and I got the GI Bill to go back to school. And when I went back to school, my undergrad at the University of New Mexico, there is a call out for a political cartoon in the Daily Lobo, the campus newspaper. And I thought I had experience because even though I was in the military, I still continued to draw. I was making caricatures and making fun of the duty and the dumb things that the officers made us do. So I thought I had experience, and I applied, and I got the job, and that's how I started into political cartooning.
For me, it was in college. I was a junior in college, and it wasn't until I was a junior in college that I had my first black teacher. I grew up in Boston, and I went to Salem State College, now university, and this black teacher taught American literature, and for writers, he assigned us Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright. And when someone said, why are you giving us all black writers? He said, I'm giving you all American writers. And that's, my work went from being about keg parties to being what it's like to be a black man growing up in America. The issues that they were writing about years before, decades before, were the same issues that we deal with today, and sort of that sent me on my way, because and the one thing I really wanted to focus on, this was the late 80s, when if you listen to hip hop, you were in a gang or something like that, and I was like, wait a second, like, everybody I know who listens to hip hop is not in a gang. We're also into other music. The reason why hip hop existed is you were taking all these, old albums with break beats and all different types of albums, rock albums, R&B albums, and taking the breaks and we're into other music, and we are smart. And so that was important for me to create a strip that reflected that. So that's really the moment that sort of sent me on my way.
All right, awesome. There was another hand up I think I saw in the back. Okay, we had 2 hands. All right, was that 2? Okay, with you, and then Nikita, I think you'll have the last question, and we'll be good. Did you?
Yeah, he had a question.
Oh, did you have a hand?
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool. All right, we're going to do this really quickly. All right, go.
Yeah, okay, kind of 2. One is, who inspired you? Kind of, what was a big point in your life where you had, creative confidence boost, say your teacher held up work? And also, you mentioned art for art's sake. A few days ago, I just heard the phrase, for the first time in my life. I tried Googling it. I don't fully understand it. Someone able to, kind of give me a rundown what it is? One sentence, but yeah, those are my 2-ish questions.
All right.
Inspired you, creative confidence.
All right. And then, Nikita, let me see. Can we get yours in on top of that?
I don't even know. I was thinking about young people and the fact that political cartooning you're talking to a very different sort of demographic who's not used to reading newspapers and things like that. And so I'm really interested in what do you all anchor yourselves to in order to stay sort of engaged with how they're learning about what is political, what is cartooning, what is critical. I mean, they're growing up in an age where Kanye literally just re-announced that he's going to run for president. And they're paying attention to totally different things right now, so I'm wondering what
I don't know
Alright.
how to mix that in, so I can ask that.
No. We're gonna make this work. All right, we're gonna make this work. Okay.
We can stick to that question back there.
All right, sure. All right, so there are 3 questions. We're gonna get this in. All right, one, how do you address the idea of art for art's sake? What is that to you? Who inspires you? And then the third question is, what keeps you anchored?
Yeah, in a time where like your demographic, your audience is really changing.
As in a time where your demographics may be changing very quickly, what keeps you anchored and keeps your audience focused? Maybe, yeah, awesome. And did you get all of that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
All right, hold on a minute. All right.
Let me adjust the art for art's sake, because I think I'm the one that brought that up. When I say that, maybe that's a bad reference, because I think all art is political. I think all art is political. You might not even realize it, but there's an agenda and there's a reason where it's placed, who made it, where it's from. All art is political. But when I say that, I mean art that's you would buy because it goes with your couch, or art is made because it's made to react in the bubble of the fine art world. It's reacting to another art form or something. It's not necessarily made for a political or social agenda. That's what I'm talking about. Art for art's sake. So a political cartoon would not be art for art's sake. It's art because it has a very specific agenda, propaganda about it. And your other question was who inspired me, or what inspired me? Mexican muralists, Mexican printmakers, La Tough, a brilliant Brazilian political cartoonist that's making art right now, super critical about colonialism and capitalism. These 2 artists that are sitting beside me, I didn't think I'd ever get to meet them personally, much less be on a panel with them. Those are some of the inspirations that come out.
Yeah, I think there's too many influences to name, but seriously, influenced by the great thing about meeting fellow artists is you're just trying to learn from them. And the first thing I wanted to do was meeting Eric, was ask him a ton of questions about murals and different things, but everything from Parliament Funkadelic albums to Warner Brothers cartoons to Mad Magazine to like my cousin Joel's work, like so many different things have influenced me. And I look at art sometimes where I like, why don't I like this cartoonist, like this cartoonist work? And I try to analyze it and say, okay, I shouldn't do that because I don't like it. Like you're always looking to hopefully improve or learn from, or just, so never stop learning. I think that's a huge thing. I think what you were trying to get at is, we started our work, especially Ann and I, in newspapers. Now that newspapers are gone, like, how do you reach anybody under 50? Maybe that could be your question, but I purposely started doing slideshow presentations to do that, to reach younger people. And my slideshow presentations, my comic strip slideshows have taken me all over the world. And it's just a great way to, and I just love engaging with audiences. And I do a slideshow that mixes storytelling and sort of, different facts and stuff, but with a lot of humor. But I use it to address, right now, currently I do a whole slideshow on what I think is America's racial illiteracy, which is we don't teach the real history of this country, and we're destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Now, that's purposely done, but everything that's going on right now, if we actually learn the history of this country, we wouldn't be surprised about it at all. The migrants being flown to Massachusetts, It happened with Southern segregationists putting black people on buses and sending them up to Massachusetts, telling them, "Oh, President Kennedy is going to give you jobs and give you housing and everything." This book banning, and it was done by Southern women after the Civil War. Let's join these school boards and get them to make sure we teach that the Civil War wasn't about slavery at all. It was about states' rights. Everything that's happening now, police brutality. Police grew out of slave patrols. They were poor whites hired to keep the black population in check and to chase down slaves. The Department of Justice's analysis on the Baltimore and Ferguson police departments basically said their job is to keep the black and brown population in check. They're doing the exact same thing of what slave patrols did, hundreds of years ago. So it's literally, if we knew the history, we wouldn't be surprised and this is what should be taught, and this is how we would make the change in America. And but there are a lot of people in power that don't want to make the change. But I mean, that's how I get my work out to younger people.
All right, awesome. And did you respond to that question?
No, but Keith inspires me. I mean, he's my inspiration. No, I mean, I'm kind of with him. I've had lots of inspirations just while I was learning, how to draw and do my art. Robert Osborne was an illustrator during the 50s and 60s, a lot of magazines like Life magazine. He did social commentary, not specifically political cartoons, but he had a beautiful expressive line. I mean, Alexander Calder, the artist who worked in sculpture and paintings and wire, he's an inspiring one for me. Gerald Scarfe, who's a editorial cartoonist in Great Britain, who is just wicked. I could never be as wicked as him, but I wish I could. He does wonderful work. And I mean, nowadays, there's a great cartoonist, social commentator, Steve Brodner, who works in New York. He does all kinds of stuff. He just came out with a book about where he started doing a drawing a day during COVID. And it's fabulous. I mean, that is what an artist should do, is if you're inspired to do something because of what you see around you. He just started doing this one drawing a day about COVID and how it was affecting people. So yeah, I mean, you get like Keith was saying, you get inspiration all around. You just have to keep looking for it and incorporating it in the work.
That is beautiful. It reminds me of a Talib Kweli quote: is that I draw on anything for inspiration, a fine memory, a piece of paper, walls in the train station. Want to leave it right there. Thank you all for joining us. Give a round of applause to our guests. Ann, Eric, Keith, thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much. Maureen, thank you for having me. It's been an honor. Let's spend some time with our guests. All right, thank you.